There is no music, only the hum of deep, resonant space. A voice fills the silence, steady and measured. Today, two truths about finding peace in a noisy world. The man who lost friends to find himself, and the man who lost everything except faith. The narrator pauses, the words hanging in the empty air like smoke. Peace is not a gift, it is a transaction. It is a weight that shifts when you finally stop trying to carry the world on your back. It demands payment. It asks for the weekends you once spent in the crowd, the approval of those who never truly knew you, and the comfort of the plans you made for a life that was never yours. The voice drops an octave, becoming more intimate, more demanding. You think you are losing ground when you let go of the noise. You are actually clearing the floor. We will look at two men today. One who walked away from the familiar to save his mind, and one who hit the bottom of the earth to find his spirit. Let us begin the descent. The heavy bass hits the chest, a rhythmic thud that vibrates through the floorboards of the Lagos Club. Tunde sits on a corner stool, his posture rigid. He stares at the condensation on his glass, ignoring the strobe lights that cut through the haze. The crowd is a sea of movement, but he is an island. A man pushes through the press, stumbling slightly, and plants a heavy hand on Tunde's shoulder. The friend reeks of gin and sweat, his face flushed bright under the flickering neon. Tunde, you have been a ghost. We hit 3 spots last weekend. You missed the entire night. Tunde sets the glass down on the wood with a quiet click. He does not turn his head. I stayed home, he says, his voice barely audible over the music. The friend scoffs, waving a hand at the dancers. Home? Doing what? You used to be the life of the party, man. Now you are just boring. Tunde finally looks up. His gaze is hollow, steady, and entirely indifferent to the accusation. Maybe, he replies. The friend stares, waiting for an argument that never comes. Tunde turns his eyes back to the floor, reclaiming his silence before the music swells again to drown out the tension. The club door swings shut, cutting the bass into a dull, rhythmic thud that fades as Tunde steps onto the balcony. The air here is still, cooled by the night wind, and the city lights stretch out beneath them like embers in a dark fireplace. He leans against the cold metal of the railing, closing his eyes to let the silence settle over him. Footsteps scrape against the concrete behind him. His cousin steps into the frame, arms crossed, looking out at the grid of traffic below. The silence holds for a long moment before the cousin turns his head. People are talking. Tunde, he says, his voice low but sharp. They say you think you are better than them now. Tunde exhales, a long, slow release of breath that catches in the breeze. He does not move. The cousin shifts his weight, his eyes searching Tunde's profile. You are burning bridges, man. Every missed event, every silent phone call, they are taking it personally. The city hums beneath them, indifferent to the judgment. Tunde stares at the horizon, where the dark sky meets the glow of the distant skyline. The cost of his quiet is becoming visible, calculated in the distance growing between him and the faces he has known for years. Tunde finally turns away from the railing. He looks down at his hands, open and empty in the moonlight. I do not think I am better, he says, his voice steady against the hum of the city. I just realized something. He pauses, watching a distant car wind through the streets below. Every time I left those rooms, I felt empty. The gossip, the constant competition, the drinking, it was all just noise. I was never happy. I was just busy. The cousin remains silent, his posture stiff against the stone. But do you not get lonely? The cousin asks. Tunde rubs his thumb across his palm, feeling the texture of his skin. Sometimes, Tunde admits, but I would rather be lonely and peaceful than surrounded and miserable. He looks up, meeting his cousin's eyes directly. Loneliness is a temporary state. The damage from the wrong people, that leaves scars. He turns back to the city, his shoulders dropping as the tension leaves his frame. The decision is made. He accepts the silence, the distance, and the isolation. He does not reach for his phone. He does not look back at the door. He simply stands in the quiet, finally undisturbed. The narrator returns, his voice deep and resonant, cutting through the silence of the city. Peace is expensive, he says. It will cost you invitations, weekends out, and familiar faces. But it is worth every coin. The camera pulls back, blurring the skyline into a haze of gold and shadow. The vibrant pulse of the city fades, replaced by the damp, Metallic scent of a narrow alleyway. The transition is sharp. The expansive view of the balcony is gone, replaced by walls that lean inward, closing off the sky. Here, in the dim light of a flickering street lamp, the air feels heavy, trapped between crumbling brick and wet asphalt. A shadow moves at the end of the lane. It is not the calculated stillness of Tunde, but the frantic, uneven gait of a man pushed to his limit. Chulku steps into the weak, yellow pool of light cast by the lamp. His head is down, his breathing jagged. He moves with a desperate, heavy rhythm, each footfall echoing against the brick. He is not looking for peace. He is looking for an exit from a cage that has already locked tight around him. The friend matches Chulku's stride, his voice rising against the hum of a distant engine. "The rent is due tomorrow," he says, gesturing toward the shadows. "The landlord is already calling. I saw him at the gate." Chulku does not look up. He keeps his gaze fixed on the uneven pavement, his pace steady but heavy. "And your girl?" the friend continues, his tone sharpening. "She left. You have nothing left in that room. What is the plan?" Chulku keeps walking, his shoulders hunched as if trying to shrink away from the weight of the questions. The narrow street curves, the walls closing in further. Every word from his friend lands like a physical blow. He passes a dumpster, the smell of rotting refuse hanging in the stagnant heat, but he does not flinch. He is entirely focused on putting one foot in front of the other. The friend grabs his shoulder, forcing him to slow down. "Look at me. You have no job, no money, and now you are alone. You need to do something." Chulku stops. He stares into the darkness ahead, his face blank, his hands hanging limp at his sides. He has no answer. The reality of his situation settles over him, absolute and crushing. The flickering bulb above them buzzed, casting rapid, strobe-like shadows across the pavement. The friend gripped Chulku's arm, his knuckles tightening as he shook him. "You are not listening to me. Prayer does not pay the rent. It does not put food on the table. You need to be practical, man. Go back to the firm. Beg them if you have to, but do something." Chulku pulled his arm away with a sharp, sudden motion. He stepped back, putting distance between them, his eyes locked onto the friend's face. "I have been practical," Chulku said, his voice low and vibrating with a strange, hard clarity. "I applied to every firm in this district. I spoke to every contact. I have begged until there is nothing left to beg with." The friend scoffed, throwing his hands up in frustration, the gesture wide and dismissive in the narrow lane. "So, that is it? You are just giving up?" Chulku shook his head slowly. "No, I am letting go. I have nothing left but this belief. So, yes, I am going to pray." The silence that followed was heavy. The friend stared at him, mouth open, searching for a rebuttal that did not come. Chulku turned his back on the argument and began to walk, leaving the logic of the world behind. The door clicked shut, locking the noise of the city outside. Inside, the room was small, sparse, and smelled of stale air. Chulku did not turn on the light. He struck a single match, watching the flame flare, then touched it to the wick of a candle. He placed it on the floor. Shadows stretched long and thin against the walls, dancing with every tremor of his hands. He sank to his knees. The floor was hard, unforgiving, and cold against his shins. He clasped his hands together, his fingers locking so tightly that the skin over his knuckles turned white. He tried to breathe, but his chest felt like it was filled with lead. He stared at the candle flame, his vision blurring. A single drop of moisture fell, then another, tracking through the dust on his skin. "God," he whispered, the sound barely audible in the quiet room. "I do not know if you are listening." His voice cracked. He leaned forward, forehead resting against his clasped hands, his body shaking with the force of his exhale. "I have no money, no job, no plan. I have tried to carry this weight alone, and I am breaking." He stayed there, motionless, anchored to the floor by the sheer gravity of his desperation. "I need you to show me the way." The candle flickered, casting his silhouette against the dark, empty space. 3 months of silence followed that night. The room that once held only shadows now caught the morning sun, casting clear light across the floor. The dust was gone. The air felt thin and clean. Chulku stood in the center of a small, quiet office. The walls were painted white, and the desk in front of him was clear of clutter. A man he had never met sat across from him, sliding a folder across the polished wood surface. It was not the firm he had begged, nor the contact he had hounded. It was an offer from a source he had never considered. Chukwu reached out, his hand steady, and felt the firm grip of the stranger. The paper was cool against his palm. He looked down at the words: a position, a salary, a future. The weight that had crushed his chest for months began to lift, replaced by a slow, physical relaxation of his shoulders. He did not cheer. He did not cry. He simply exhaled, a long, quiet release of breath that emptied his lungs of the last of the fear. He looked up at the stranger and nodded, a slight, genuine smile touching his lips. "You heard me," he murmured, the words barely audible in the quiet space. The uncertainty of the last year had finally hit a solid floor. He had waited, and the wait had ended. The narrator returns, his voice resonant and steady, filling the silence. At the end of the day, only God keeps his promises. Everyone else is just making plans. He pauses, allowing the weight of the statement to settle. Peace is expensive. It will cost you invitations, weekends out, and familiar faces. It demands that you walk away from the noise and the hollow expectations of others. But it is worth every coin. He shifts the focus back to the quiet endurance shown in the darkness. When you have nothing left, when the bank calls and the doors are locked, sometimes all you have is a prayer. It is not a strategy. It is not a business plan. It is a surrender. He leans into the final thought, his tone softening. Faith is not about having the answers immediately. It is about the ability to wait when the world tells you to panic. Peace costs more than money, and it costs more than status, but it is the only thing that remains when the dust settles. You lose the people who never belonged in your future, and you gain the stillness that sustains you. Hold to the promise, keep the faith, and wait. The answer finds you when you finally stop trying to carry the weight alone.